Hello, Mr. Smith here with 7th Hour U.S. History. Just wanted to take another look at the space program today. We've talked about it before, but there's so much science and technology and amazing progress that was made here. So, quick dates: 1959, America appoints its first 7 astronauts and begins training them. Project Mercury will include both the first suborbital and orbital flights for America. The first American in space was Alan Shepard. In 1961, he does a suborbital flight. The first American to orbit the Earth, John Glenn, orbits the Earth in 1962. It goes on from there: Project Gemini, Project Apollo, the moon landing. Let's take a look. Project Mercury, the first space capsule, first model, the first design for a space capsule the United States had. This capsule first flew in 1961. They made a number of these, and they flew through 1961, 1962. They were single-seaters, one-man space capsule. The first two Mercury capsules were placed on top of a Redstone booster. This is a solid fuel rocket and was used for suborbital flights. The next several Mercury capsules were placed on top of an Atlas booster. This was a liquid-fueled rocket, much larger, much powerful, and it was used for orbital flights. So we went from suborbital to orbital flights in the Mercury program. Next up was the Gemini program. This was a two-seater, larger space capsule, 2 astronauts on board. It was placed on top of a still larger rocket called the Titan. It was used for extended orbital flights. Astronauts were in orbit for several days. Highlight of the Gemini program was the fact that the capsule had this white service module behind it. So the capsule itself is the dark part, and the service module contained extra oxygen, extra fuel, extra water, and extra batteries for electrical supply. The white service module was separated from the capsule when the capsule prepared to re-enter the Earth's atmosphere and bring the astronauts back home. During the Gemini program, people began to walk in space. The first American to walk in space was named Ed White, and yes, he lived in Ann Arbor and attended the University of Michigan. Walking in space was a huge deal because the astronaut was leaving the protection and safety of the space capsule and relying only on the spacesuit to keep him alive. The third major space program relied on a rocket called the Saturn V, the largest and most powerful rocket ever built. The Saturn V was used for the Apollo program, and here you see the Apollo command module and service module together as a unit. The command module is what we'd call the space capsule, and the Apollo is a three-seater, 3 men in the command module or the space capsule. It was attached to the service module, which held extra oxygen, extra batteries, extra fuel, electrical supplies, etc., etc. The command module and the service module were then linked to the lunar module. So 3 separate modules, but they were all hooked together during space flight. And this is the configuration that it would have on the way to the moon. It takes a couple days to get to the moon, and they were all hooked together in this configuration on their way to the moon. When they got to the moon, the lunar module separated from the other two and landed. The other 2 modules stayed in orbit around the moon, while 2 of the 3 astronauts went down to the surface of the moon. This is the way the modules were configured during launch from Earth. Notice the lunar module here is on the other side of the command and service modules, so there were different configurations at different times during the space flight. So it was July 1969 that man first set foot upon the moon. An amazing achievement, kind of an amazing sight to see a human footprint on the moon. This was celebrated around the world as one of our greatest scientific and technological achievements, but also a great deal of human bravery. A fun part of the lunar missions was the moon buggy, the ability to drive around the moon, which was pretty exciting because in low gravity it was a bouncy ride. The base camp for many of the Apollo missions was the lunar module landing there or parked on the moon and the moon buggy next to it, and you can see one astronaut in the background. The last human beings to walk on the moon did so in 1972. So it's been a long time since we've actually been on the moon, but hopefully we're going to get back there soon. To compare then, side by side, you see the Mercury, the Gemini, and the Apollo, respectively 1, 2, and 3 person capsules. They're all shaped kind of like cones or pyramids or gumdrops because they were all the very nose, the very tippy top of the rocket. So they were all had that same general cone-like shape. You can see here the boosters that carried them up, the Saturn V, much, much larger than either the Titan or the Atlas that were used for the other 2 programs. And so it was that we carried out these missions. 1961, the first American in orbit in the Mercury program. 1969, the Apollo astronauts land on the moon for the first time. And 1972, Apollo astronauts land on the moon for the final time. So we go from the first American in space, Alan Shepard, in 1961, to landing on the moon in 1969. In 8 years, just each year getting bigger and going farther and going for longer periods of time. First moon landing, 1969. Last time we were on the moon, 1972. So it's actually been many, many years since any human being set foot on the moon. We'll see if NASA does it again soon. All right, that's all for today. Bye-bye.